Hello, and welcome back to Avon Talks. My name is Ethan Guo. What does the heyday of American industrialization have to do with Avon, Connecticut? The answer is in Lions Club International. In 1917, the Lions Club was first founded in Chicago, Illinois, in response to the height of American industrialism, where widespread disease, poor living conditions, and endemic child labor ravaged many dense metropolitan areas. It wouldn't take long for the club to extend its impact throughout the United States and across the world, eventually playing a crucial role in forming the NGO section of the then newly established United Nations in 1945. The Lions first formally made their presence felt here in Avon, Connecticut in 1951 and have since then become a cornerstone of charitable social service within the community. To talk more about this journey with us is Heidi Zacchera, the president of the Avon Lions Club since 2004. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
The Avon Lions Club has been in the town for a long, long time now. It's been in the town since around 1951. Can you tell me a little bit about what the process was like starting this chapter in Avon and adding on to that, why this chapter was started in Avon?
Usually the starting of a Lions Club comes with a sponsorship club, which happened to be West Hartford Club for the Avon Club. And they sponsor, and what Avon's job is to put everything together so that they get interested parties, interested members in being a part of the club, and then eventually they will have a charter. And Avon was able to get 27 initial members, and they formed in June of 18th of 1951. Just so happened that my dad was the first president, Ray Zacchera. So the Lions Club organization does try to strive to have clubs in every town or close to every town, just because their motto is the more lions there are, the more hands and feet to the ground that can help people. And so right now in the Hartford and Litchfield County, we have 55 clubs with over 1,800 members. And in the state, we have 3 different districts. So ours happens to be one of the largest.
But was there a reason why they sponsored a chapter in Avon specifically, or was it just they were looking to expand to all of
sometimes
Connecticut?
they look to expand, and that's why they do it.
What was the early Avon Lion Club like then?
So during the early years, from what I understand, is they had many projects that were, to me, phenomenal. They built a house and they sold it. They sponsored circuses, which is amazing. They held auctions, tag sales, pancake breakfasts, pasta suppers. They sold hamburgers and hot dogs at the local carnival. And their largest fundraising project, was raising over $40,000 for the Fidelco guide dog to promote 2 guide dogs, get them trained and everything so they could go out to the public. And the thing that was also interesting back in those days was that it was a much wilder situation because it was an all-men's organization. They used to cut up people's ties, cut them in half. That was the whole thing. They had this person called the tail twister, and their job was to make the meetings lively and entertaining. And then finally, they got smart in 1987 and allowed women to join the organization. Initially, women were on the outskirts of the organization, and they were known as lionesses. So the woman finally got involved. However, Avon was never gave my father a hard time about this, but they were a little late taking in the women, and finally took them in, first woman in 1992.
Do you know what caused this, or like why they started letting in women join the main branch of the club, or?
Well, I think because International had brought this declaration down, they probably felt like they should think about it. And as any organization, you get locked into what you're used to, and you don't think of other things that you could do.
Yeah.
So they finally broke down. And as some of our longtime members would say, if you ask them, they would say it's the best thing that ever happened to Lions. The women are hard workers and get things done.
I think you brought up something interesting. When I think about the Lions Club, or like one of these community-oriented sort of charitable organizations, I don't necessarily think very boisterous, very like lively community internally. When you brought up like all men, and then they would have like event planners who would try to make their meetings more eventful, more interesting. It sort of reminded me of like a fraternity at a college. That's that's sort of the mental image I got when you started mentioning that.
I'm sure that's what it was like. Yeah, and there were a lot more wilder things that I can't tell you, and I probably wasn't even told.
We'll do it off mic later. But also, I think it's really interesting that this club was so well organized and so effective in the earlier years. Like from what you just said, it seems like they got a lot done. And I was sort of wondering, what do you think allowed this to happen? I know the Lions Club and the Lions community was primarily a profession, like it primarily had professionals in the club. Do you think that this might have helped, or?
No, I think it definitely helped because they had the craftsmen who were builders, construction people, and so it was easy for them to build houses because they had everybody there, so it kept the costs down and it just made it easier for them to make it happen. And as far as them being able to get organized quickly, the Lions International would have things to help them in that manner, as well as the West Hartford Club.
How did the Lions Club grow in prominence between 1950 and today? What was the process like? I know, at least what you told me, it seemed like it was a fairly prominent club already back then, but I guess what was this progress of change?
I joined in 2001 at their 50th anniversary, so I kind of missed a chunk of time. I used to go to events with my father, but again, I wasn't really aware of the organization, and I just think as things evolve in the world, it's up to the board of the organization to decide what direction to take. And the biggest thing is they're always trying to think of the needs of the community. And so as needs of the community would jump forward, that's when they would step forward and say, well, we can do this. And some of our Lions International initiatives that have been changing through the years right now are childhood cancer, diabetes, the environment, hunger, and vision. And then the clubs can come up with their own initiatives as well, as you could hear from what I told you earlier.
You sort of touched on this, but I guess could you expand a little on how maybe the needs of the community have changed from before to now and how Lions is sort of addressing this?
That is a tough question because the world is just changing constantly, and how we handle ourselves and what we do.
The Avon's Lion Club, like it gets like the international mandate, right? But it also has its own, as you mentioned, it also has its own prerogatives of like projects that it wants to work on within its local community. So I think it's probably very hard. It's a very hard question to answer, like how the international community has changed, especially since areas are so different. But maybe if you could speak just more generally about Avon itself and how you've seen the needs in Avon change during your tenure, or even since your dad's time and now.
That is such a hard question. I am an Avon native, obviously, and when I think about the changes, there's just been culturally, everything about the community is different. It seemed to be, everybody knew everybody back in the day.
Yeah.
And now that it's grown, it just takes longer period of time to be able to figure out things. And so as Lions, we need to have a pulse on the community.
Yeah.
And we can ask the town clerk, town manager, what are some things that the community could use or that we could help the community with?
Yeah. I think that's actually a really interesting point, just comparing and contrasting Avon before to Avon now, and just American life before and now. It's like small town life has changed a lot, and I think people don't necessarily always come to realize how complex society has become. More generally, back to Avon's Lion Club, what are some of the expanded programs that the Avon Lions Club has developed more recently since your founding?
So it is interesting because some of the things have stayed in place and some were sort of adding in that they did ages ago. The town social services is always connecting us with people in the community who need our help. I don't know as that was in place back in the day. but we're still helping. We just recently painted an elderly person's garage, for instance. It's not our forte. It's not something, we display signs about, but we are willing to help in any way we can. They, in the day, used to build handicap ramps for the disabled, and we don't do that as much because we don't happen to have the people in that strength, that have that strength, and also the liabilities. That's another thing that's changed in the world.
Yeah.
The liabilities around all of that. But for instance, they cleared a path at one of the schools for a hiking trail, and we now end up doing an environmental cleanup on a continual basis with Fisher Meadow, and then we adopted Tillotson Road. We have just recently added a carnival, which is huge.
Yeah.
Again, that is probably equal to their circus. Other things, we started a medical durable loan locker, which again, I don't think was thought of that much before.
Yeah.
Where people can borrow any durable equipment that they might need. We do vision screening, has expanded tremendously. We also work with Meals on Wheels, just many blood drives. Blood drives, I don't think was thought of for people to volunteer and help with, but we always now volunteer at those, which really helps the Red Cross.
With all these new initiatives that you guys are doing, how do you guys decide on what specifically? Because no organization can sort of do everything. How do you guys decide which areas to hone in on?
So one of my personal things was that I wanted people to think outside the box, and I want the club to have ownership in everything we do. So we actually, at the beginning of the year, would have a meeting and say, okay, this is what we've been doing. What would you like to do? And we have two different arms to our organization. One is a fundraising charity side, and the other is service. And so we try to hit the different initiatives that International wants us to hit, as well as ones that we want to hit, either financially or service-wise. So the club actually sat down, and we had, the good old paper up on the wall, and we just kept on writing all the different ideas. And then we went another meeting and said, okay, which one of these do we want to hit this year? And it was great because people thought of different things that we've never done. And so, again, it expands what we do. Our club is different from Simsbury. It's different from all other clubs in a lot of manners, just because of the different interests and the passion that people bring into the club.
Yeah, and sort of on that note about these new people bringing in ideas to the clubs, since 1950, obviously, the club has expanded membership-wise and community-wise and changed in a number of ways. I was sort of wondering, how might that changing community have brought in sort of new, fresh blood into the club, and how that might have changed the club's community as a whole from, the 1950s wild fraternity style club that it was, that still did a lot of charitable organizations, and how that's changed today.
So it's interesting you bring that up, because years and years ago we had 32 people showing up. We have dinner meetings at different restaurants. And we were used to having 32 people at the meetings. So why do we need more people? And it just so happened before the next year I was going to be president, and I graphed out how long people had been in the club. And from that, I noticed how there was a huge void, how we hadn't brought in members. So that's when I was like, we have to bring in members, otherwise we're going to age out. And so by bringing in the new members, it's just amazing the energy, the passion, just the different insights that they bring to the club. And it just gives the club even more excitement to move forward and to try different things and do different things. So new membership is something that we always need to be striving for.
What would you say drew people to join or volunteer their time with the Lions Club? And also, what kind of people do you generally see joining? Is it still mostly professionals? Is it still very male-dominated? Or has the field completely shifted since then?
Okay, let me see if I can touch upon all of those.
Take your time.
As far as giving back to the community, I know it took me a while myself. And all of a sudden, I decided in 2001 that I wanted to give back to the community. And I asked my mother, would my father mind if I joined? So that to me was an example of, I had never really thought about that because I was so busy and everything else, my career and everything else I was doing. But I was so thankful to get involved with that. I think a lot of people in the community don't really know how they can give back to the community. And when the time is right for them to do that, they want to know their options. I know there's movement afoot as we speak to have like an open house for any nonprofits where the nonprofits can give a little talk about their particular club, and then the community can think about it and say, hey, I really think that, means a lot to me. I would like to do that. And therefore they would get involved. As far as professionals, non-professionals, we have it all. We have, homemakers, we have high-end professionals. It doesn't matter. We're just looking for people who want to give to us as much as they can. We don't have any set parameters. You have to be to X amount of meetings. You have to do X amount of work. It's whatever they can do. And we welcome any new people who want to join us because that's what we need.
Yeah.
We need that new life and new excitement.
Even in this evolving landscape, though, would you say that there's still the core aspect of community that you mentioned ever since the 1950s?
Isn't that interesting? The thing I think is tougher now is people's time. So I think before, when we had the 32 meeting all the time, obviously everybody knew everybody inside and out. We knew each other's families. We had grown up together, basically. Now it's because, again, Avon has grown, there isn't as much of the closeness, but we do get it with the people who do come to the meetings. I think the things that also help us is when we do our events together, when we can work together. That's when you see the camaraderie. When we're doing the pasta dinner, we have that coming up in April. Everybody's working together for a common good. Any other projects like that, when we do the road cleanups, you're there, walking along with at least one other person, if not a couple. But we don't do anything special as far as team building. It just happens. And I'm the type of person, my personality is I have to have fun. Otherwise, I don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly trying to make meetings fun so people laugh and people seem to enjoy themselves, which I think pulls us together.
Which I think is a good transition to a little bit about how you personally got involved within the Avon Lions Club. I know you talked about it a little earlier. What was this journey like? I mean, obviously your dad was in the Lions Club. You knew it was a thing that happened. You've lived in Avon for a very long time. And now you're the first female president of the Lions Club. I was sort of wondering, could you tell us a little bit about this journey and what inspired you?
Well, I think it helped, again, that my father was in the club. A lot of people knew me just because of my father. And so, obviously, it was going to be different because I would be...
Was your father a former president of the club, or was he just part of it?
He was the first president.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So he kind of laid the ground rules at the beginning. But they
Do you think you did a better job than him?
I'm not going to answer that. I would have loved, actually, to see him. It kind of amazes me that he was the first president, because I didn't see that in him. He was very smart in what he did. But at any rate, so I think when I was president, I knew, because I had been in leadership position in other organizations, that I obviously had to tread lightly.
Yeah.
I was a first director of a men's chorus, for instance. So I got the differences that you had to think about. So I knew I wasn't going to come in, and you shouldn't come in to change everything just to change it.
Yeah.
There's got to be a reason.
Yeah.
So I really tried to read the audience so as to get their backing and to get them to know I'm on your side. One good example of that was two of our longstanding members had been in charge of our fundraisers. And I I ended up taking over. They asked me to take over this after I was president, this particular pasta dinner and the breakfast. And I said, have you ever thought about possibly having the food donated in advance, cut the overhead? Because then I knew I was definitely treading on thin ice because these guys have been doing this forever.
Yeah.
And so I kind of got their opinion and did it. And, again, it was very successful to do that sort of thing with the different thinking. But sometimes you get locked in to always doing things the same way, and you just have to think differently. So that's the biggest thing I think that I can remember as far as the difference between men and women per se.
And I mean, I think this sort of ties into the former piece about the changing community and just getting more people, more fresh ideas. What you sort of talked to might have been your moment of being the fresh blood and changing things up and, seeing how things can be different. I know you talked about this. You didn't talk about it specifically, but you mentioned Lions International a lot. And so I was sort of wondering, could you untangle a little, what is Lions International? How is that different from the Avon Lions Club? And how does this sort of infrastructure, how does the structure work between all these different organizations on national stage, international stage, local stage?
Okay, very good. So actually there's the club level is the lowest level. Then the next level up is district level. And the district level, as I said, there's 55 clubs in our section of Connecticut with 1,800 members. And you have a district governor who oversees the entire district. They're like the president. And also to tie in our club with this, we've had past district governors, they're called. Otto Rupert was in 77. Don Griswold was in 96. Dave Yaddick in 09. And then I was in 2020. And so the district level, besides the district governor, you have to move up. There's vice district governors, there's cabinet members, there's a whole separate board. It's a huge board of over 50 people, basically, on the cabinet. And after the district level, the international level has, obviously, president, again, vice presidents. They do numbers, 1, 2, 3. And they are the ones who give us the initiatives that they would like to see us do. They give us directives. Like right now, we have a woman president. It's the second woman president. And she gives us directives like she wants us to have 1.5 million. Because right now, we have 1.4 million. We're in over 200 countries around the world. And we are the largest service organization, as I said earlier in the webcast.
So this has grown a lot then since before, I'm assuming, like since its founding in the 1950s. I was sort of wondering, could you maybe talk a little bit about how it's different now working within this huge, overarching service organization as opposed to earlier when maybe it wasn't as robust and developed as it is now?
Okay, so from my experience, when I first joined the club, and for many years, I didn't even know the district level existed, for instance. Forget about international. I mean, I got the Lions magazine, I understood it, but I didn't understand the hierarchy, and it's almost like, it's a bad thing, but you can be a club and kind of unaware of what's happening.
Yeah.
And yet, it's important to get the clubs involved with the district because then you get the support of the district. And if I could take a side journey, before I came here today, our district had planned an event where we could get boxes of food. They called it human food, which made me laugh. Pet food, personal items, and toys, that sort of thing, that then we could bring back to our community and deliver to like gifts of love and the animal control officer and the food pantry. If we didn't have that tie-in with the district, as we do now, now that I know there's a district and have been involved in it, we would lose out on those opportunities. And so it's good for all the clubs and the members to know that there's not just little Avon Club. There's many other clubs. There's the district out there who is there to assist, as well as the international organization. Also, as an aside, if I can say this,
For sure.
in Connecticut, we have the greatest guy in the world. He's now the 3rd vice president of international. So eventually he will be our international president. And to see him in action is incredible. He's going to be awesome. So because he is in this position, that's another job for our district to also be there to promote him in his position.
I see.
Along with international. So we have a great tie right now with international in Connecticut.
And so I think that's a good transition to, I mean, you talked a little bit about this before, but what are some of the current projects that the Avon Lions Club is working on, like presently?
So again, the newest, it was new last year, was the Carnival, which is probably one of our biggest events we've ever gone after. And I had always wanted to, I was trying to think of how to bring the community together after COVID. And at first I thought, oh, it'd be great to have, a little picnic kind of thing where the town came together and have games, etc. And then a new member had suggested a carnival. And so I was like, sure, let's do a carnival. I'm not afraid to jump in on different things. And so we did that last year. Unfortunately, the weather didn't cooperate, so we at least got in Friday night. But we are pushing ahead this year. We have a different date. And what is awesome for me is that the town and the community are so behind this event. It makes it all worth the work that goes into it. To expand on it a little bit more, the Recreation and Parks Department had done a survey, and one of the biggest items that came up is the community wanted events that they could look forward to every year. So this was one of those events that they could have.
So aside from the carnival, though, you guys also do a lot of work with young people. You guys have the Leo Club at the middle school and high school. I was sort of wondering, could you expand a little bit upon that? What was the thought process behind it? What are you guys trying to achieve with it, basically?
So this is another event that comes down from on high, from the international organization to the district. And in the district, there's a Leo advisor. So they're always trying to promote clubs in towns where there's clubs. So with me, it just so happened I taught in Canton, and they did not have a Leo club. And so I thought this would be nice to have a Leo club. I knew that Avon had one because we sponsored both at the middle school and the high school. And so what happened was John Snyder at the time was the Leo advisor in Avon, and I was at Canton High School. And so we were each other's buddies, per se, because you need somebody connected with the different clubs. And so those Leos decide what they want to do. They're their own entity, and we support them in any way we can. If like for instance this year they wanted to do one of those little libraries that they have at the library, not at the library, at the senior center. So we help them have that come to fruition. The hope for international is that they in turn will become Lions later on in life. That's the end result. But also, it's giving them the experience. It's leadership, education, and opportunity as far as what Leo stands for. Lions in general are always trying to promote and make leaders.
Yeah, I mean, wait, well, first of all, I think to clarify, did the Leo Club exist before you came, or were you sort of, you were like fundamental in starting the Leo Club?
I started the one in Canton.
Okay. But in Avon?
In Avon, I might have been. I can't remember because it hasn't been around that long.
We'll just say you started it. We'll give you the credit.
You could just say the club started it.
But also, you guys also have what I think is really interesting is the Citizen of the Year Award in Avon. I was sort of wondering, how did this come about, and what do you think the value is in it?
So those awards came before I was involved, and we, the club usually chooses to honor an outstanding member of the community, and we either give the Citizen of the Year award or a public servant award. And it's a way of the club to acknowledge somebody, town employees, town board members, commission members, or anybody like that, police, fire department, for what they're doing in the community, to show that we notice what they're doing and we want them to get some recognition.
Who was your I don't want to say your favorite, but what was one of the more interesting or memorable Citizen of the Years that you've honored?
You're going to get me in trouble now.
Either in your time or before your time, which might.
Okay, I'll go with a couple. That should make it safer for me. So one a while back was Alan Rosenberg, who is the town social services department, who we work closely with. And so he was one that we felt was deserving, and I know there's plenty of them out there. The other one more recently was Deanna, the owner of Cake Gypsy, because during COVID especially, she was fairly new, and the amount of things she was donating, and when we had blood drives, she donated cupcakes, individually wrapped, that the people who donated blood would be able to take and have. So those were a couple of our past and recent
Yeah.
awardees.
I mean, I wasn't really expecting any. I wasn't like, that was like a leading question for anything that I was anticipating. I was just sort of curious.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, so we're sort of running short on time, and I think we went through a lot. And honestly, you guys do a lot of these individual projects. I feel like each of them could have their own episodes. So there was no way. We were basically setting ourselves up for failure trying to cover the entire Lions Club in just one, 40-minute episode. But sort of as a closing note, what are some plans that you have going forward? And, especially since you are the club president, sort of what direction were you planning on taking the Avon Lions Club in the future?
That will be governed by the club. I mean, that's something, I will meet with them again and say, what did we like about this year? What would we like to change? I've got to take kind of a side journey and say one of the aspects that to me is most rewarding is the vision screening. Lions have purchased these expensive cameras, and they were $15,000. I'm not sure how much they are now. And these cameras are phenomenal. We go into nursery schools and public schools when they allow us in, and we are able to take these cameras, sit about 6 feet away from the child, and it actually takes a picture inside their pupils so they can tell if the child has any issues, astigmatism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they will get a printout, and 10 to 15% of the children are found to have an issue. And so one of the cases, it wasn't in Avon, but it was with Lions, where this child was referred to a doctor because of what was seen, and the child ended up having a tumor. And if that tumor hadn't been found, the child would have died. So I'm looking at the vision screening expanding, which it already is. It's becoming digitalized so that we don't have to put in the children's long last names or their first names. All we do is start the name and it goes right in. The other thing is that they are going to be finally adding the hearing component, which I think will be awesome, because you think about when you were a kid, you're still a kid, you just go by what you're used to. This is how you see. This is the way you hear. And you don't realize it's not normal and that things can be better. So I'm hoping that the hearing aspect will come in for us to get involved in. And maybe for us to even be able to get into more nursery schools and more schools. I had an Avon resident call me, and they help out in Hartford. And she was saying she knows children there who need glasses. And so, could we come in? And that's something our club is willing to do. We're willing to get Hartford clubs involved. We also, I know it's running out of time, but we also help to finance people in need to get either an appointment or glasses. So in the future, I don't know. We're going to see. We're just going to I want to keep putting us out there as much as I can when I'm in a leadership role, and to just keep on thinking outside the box and what we can do to make a difference.
This podcast is an Avon Historical Society production, edited by me, Ethan Guo. Special thanks to Priscilla Marshall for the graphics. If you would like to support this podcast, please subscribe and leave a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever else podcasts are downloaded. Want to be featured on a future episode or stay up to date with the podcast newsletter? Feel free to reach out to us at avontalksahs@gmail.com. For more on the Avon Historical Society, visit www.avonhistoricalsociety.org.